Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. So, what a weird place to be in. I was waiting to talk about this all day, but you know, the way my schedule is, I saw the movie last night, then passed out right away, then got up, did all my What If coverage. If you want to see, let's say, the spoiler review, you can check that out right up there for What If Episode 2. But now that I'm clear of my What If stuff, it's time to sit down and talk about this horror sequel that I never in a million years saw coming. And after watching, I wonder if it needed to exist at all. I'm not saying that it's a bad movie, but it just inherently had issues coming in that were going to be tough to overcome because of what you did in the first one. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free into Don't Breathe 2. And if you saw my throwback review, you know that I enjoyed Don't Breathe quite a bit. When that came out in 2016, I believe, I thought it was a really cool movie. Like, you come into it where you just have a bunch of not good guys, you know? It's like you have people who are robbing this poor blind military vet, so you're feeling for him, but then you find out that he's kidnapped a girl who killed his daughter accidentally in a car crash and has impregnated her, not via himself. We'll just say that. The movie gets dark, right? But you get to this place where you make Stephen Lang's character, Norman Nordstrom, who's the name he's given this time. He was just the blind man in the first movie. But you got him to a place, once you made those reveals, once he kidnapped Rocky and put her in the straps, and she was real close to being his next captor or whatever it is, you know, it just took him to a place that made him pretty irredeemable as a character. So you go into this sequel and you're like, alright, so we've got a similar scenario, right? Bunch of people trying to break into his home to take something. Bad guys. And then you have Stephen Lang, who is a horrible person. And then there's this little girl. And that was one of those things where when I was watching the trailers, I forgot what his ultimate objective was, which was to have a replacement daughter. So when I rewatched the movie, I was like, oh no, is this going to be something really screwed up? But if you think about how old the girl is and where we are in relation to the original movie, not enough time would have passed. But nevertheless, they do find a way for something to happen in this little girl's life that then lands her, in the care of the blind man for 8 years. Spoilers, but she's there for 8 years, and that's where we kind of pick up. We see that beginning, and then we jump to what we've seen in the trailers, which is her during her training, and you find out that Lang's character is training her, to be ready to stop, I assume, people like him. You know what I mean? But it's one of these things where the first movie did this kind of crazy balancing act because you didn't really have too many redeemable characters in there in general. Rocky was the closest simply because she had a little sister and their mom and the situation at home wasn't good, so she's doing the bad things she does to try to get her little sister out of a bad situation. You can somewhat kind of pull for Rocky by the time you get to the end of that movie. So naturally, the little girl here, who is named Phoenix by the blind man, although, like I said, they gave him this name, Norman Nordstrom, in this. She's played by Madeline Grace, who absolutely crushes. I mean, she is so freaking good in this movie. But she's You're rooting for her the whole time. And credit to Fede Alvarez and co-writer Rodo Sayagues, who is directing this time. They flip-flopped the director's chair. Fede did the first one. Sayagues gets to do the second one. And I give them credit because, like I said, I think this is a property that, based on where you ended the first one, there's really no reason to come back to it. Because if you're coming back to it and you're doing similar things, at this point, we can't root for the blind guy at all. He is really, really bad. And you kind of put your audience in the situation where you're kind of forced to have to root for this guy because he's probably the best out for the little girl. But once again, they do this balancing act where you kind of swing back and forth a little bit. As you start to learn why these people are coming after the little girl, what their actual deal is, you're kind of oh, well, maybe we should swing back to this side. And then something happens where it's well, no, we probably shouldn't swing. And it's a weird thing to kind of ask your viewers to come in and pick sides when there's just nothing but terrible people involved. And it worked the first time because you were able to save some of the surprises around the bad, the blind man being the bad guy. You don't have that this time. You know everything that he's done in his history, and you know whatever he's done here is probably messed up in some way, and you're just waiting for it. But all that aside, right, the big obstacle to get over, the big hurdle to clear was all that stuff. And I gotta say, I thought Alvarez and Sayagues do a pretty good job with it. The first half to almost 3/4 of this movie, I was really riding with it. I praised Fede Alvarez for the the scene in the dark in the basement in the first one, where it looked like they shot in low light and then they just dialed the brightness up to create this kind of black and white effect that where actual light popped, you get like splashes of color. I don't know if that's how they did it, but that's how I would think you would do that, and like, what a cool thing. And while visually, I don't think Sayagues has a trick like that anywhere in the movie. He has a sequence where you've got to watch Phoenix kind of play cat and mouse, where these intruders are entering the home, the blind man is not there for the moment, and she's got to avoid them. And she is probably moving between multiple floors, multiple rooms, with like 3-4 guys in the house looking for her. It is a freaking magic trick, man. Like, the whole time you were just like on edge and so impressed at what this little girl is doing. Like, the training that she's had really allows her to do some cool things. And for me, that was the sequence of the movie. Like, that first one had that low light bit that Alvarez did. This had this cat and mouse game with the little girl and the intruders. And there's a bunch of cool action here. Once again, Sayagues and Alvarez find ways for the blind man to function in an action movie that really, really worked. But then the movie starts to do what you hate to see certain sequels do, and that's try to get bigger. And I'm not gonna lie to you, once you leave the blind guy's house, it's hard for me to buy him still pulling off the things that he pulls off. Like, he has to get to another location that's definitely nowhere near where his house is. And there is a logic in the movie that technically works, but like, it is a super, super, super long stretch. And that just kind of took me out of it. Like, I thought the movie just got a little too big. Now, granted, when he gets where he's going, they do still find some cool things to do action-wise with the concept of a blind person. And they do continually throughout the whole movie keep you guessing. You're able to put some twists and turns in. Like I said, some of the pendulum swinging that happens this time around really worked at times. But at the end of the day, it got a little too big. It bit off a little bit more than it could chew, and it started to stretch itself. And the thing that I loved about the first one was that it felt real. Like, it felt like everything that happened in that movie could totally happen in real life. This one is a little kind of far out there by the end. And again, just putting your audience in the situation that you put them in just kind of puts you in this uncomfortable place where it's like, I'm rooting for a guy who openly in the movie at one point, spoilers, like, admits that he has done terrible things. He's killed people, he's raped people. Like, to put your audience in a scenario where, like, we want to go on another adventure with this guy is a tough sell, and it didn't quite hit the mark. Like I said, like, you walked a real fine tightrope in that first one. That tightrope is even finer this time, and it just didn't quite work for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I hated it. I actually enjoyed good stretches of this movie, and as I said, the little girl, Phoenix, who's played by Madeline Grace, MVP, man. I was obsessed with her in this movie. She's so freaking good, and they ask her to do such big adult things in the movie, like from the training that she has to the just the things she has to deal with, the stuff they put on her plate. Man, it would be a lot for a 35-year-old seaman. I can't imagine being a little girl having to deal with all the stuff that she's presented in this movie, and I think Madeline Grace does it with a wonderful grace. She's got this rawness to her performance. She kind of comes off a little bit like a wild person, which is cool, because, like, during the training sequence, you get, like, she's really agile in the way she moves in the house and how she avoids people, and just some of the things that they've built into her training or things create really harrowing, edge of your seat moments that are around Phoenix. And everything around Phoenix, I really dug. Stephen Lang crushes it again. He is phenomenal at this role. Whether or not, he is a character that's worthwhile to go back to for a second time, debatable. But what he does in the role, just as good as the first one. He is excellent in the movie. My biggest gripe is that they gave him a name in this one, Norman Nordstrom, which they never say in the movie, but it's in the credits and on IMDb. But the other thing, too, his eye makeup, whatever context they gave him this time, didn't quite work as well as the first movie. The first movie, I thought he visually looked way creepier in some of the lighting that they put him. Here, his eyes came off a little bit more normal, but doesn't take away from the performance. I mean, the things that he does, and continually, much like the first movie, you watch this and you go, I'm pretty sure Stephen Lang is blind. I think he could do all these things. I don't know if he's looking at all. Those contacts might actually block him out. He crushes again. And then we have an interesting cast of other characters. Brendan Sexton III, who plays Raylan, he's kind of the leader of this group, does a really good job. Skeeves you out when he needs to skeeve you out, but also is able to kind of pull you into his world a little bit, where you're like, again, it's one of those characters where you kind of end up in a back and forth where it's like, well, maybe this is the guy we should be siding with? I don't know. And he walks that line very, very well. While the movie, like I said, struggles a little bit with it, I think all of the performances do a really good job of towing the lines and taking it to where it needs to go to, make you feel the ways that you're supposed to feel about these characters. Stephanie Arcilla, who plays Hernandez, you find out that, one, pretty sure they don't say it, but he's not in the same house as the first movie, and he has a little greenhouse, so he sells plants. So Hernandez comes up and basically picks up the plants to go deliver them. I guess that's how he makes his money, because he don't have millions no more, because Rocky has all those with the payoff from the first movie. Then she also is kind of a secondary support system for Phoenix. She takes her into town occasionally, and while the blind man is very strict, you really do get a sense that Hernandez understands, I think, who that guy is, but cares so much about Phoenix. Just the interaction that she has with Phoenix in the movie is wonderful. And then one of the other things that I had an issue with was where they decided to take that character. I thought Arcilla did a really nice job, but the decision they made, shocking, but threw me out a little bit. I was like, that would you took away one of the other, there were two people that I was okay rooting for in this movie, and you sidelined one of them, and it was shocking. And that's what you're going with. Cool. But I didn't like what they ended up handling, how they handled that character. And then everybody else that pops in here, Roki Williams plays this real big dude. Bobby Schofield plays the brother to Adam Young, his Jim Bob, who is the creepiest, I think, of the entire group of people going after this girl. Loved all of their performances. They do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they function the way that they're supposed to function. And the thing that I really dug was what Rocky Williams' Duke is left with by the end of the movie. There's a specific decision that happens where you're like, I wish we could have known more about that guy earlier. But I think he does a really good job. And then the only other person I'll call out is Fiona O'Shaughnessy. I won't say who she is in the movie, but when she appears, she makes a very striking performance right from the jump. And it's an interesting, she plays into the story in an interesting way, where it was I didn't mind the move, and it allows you into, it helps clear some things up. But I thought O'Shaughnessy did a really nice job of being, super eerie and super creepy and super effed up. This movie, again, takes you to a really, really effed up place. It gets super dark at the end, and not as dark as the first movie, but definitely takes it to some places where you're like, damn, man, no matter what you feel about this movie, you can't blame these guys for swinging for the fences, and that's certainly what they do here. So, movie doesn't completely work for me, but it's not terrible too. It was enjoyable enough for the elements that worked within the movie, and I'm so here for anything that you want to give Madeline Grace. take me back to this world in a Don't Breathe 3 through that character, I'd sign up for that movie. But those are pretty much all my thoughts, which means it's time for a score. So let's get the old C-Maniacs up. There they are. I gave Don't Breathe a 3.5. This movie, I think, does not execute as well as the first movie does. It does have some wonderful stretches. That sequence in the house with Phoenix is just, it's one of my favorite things from the series in general. Her performance is amazing. All the performances are amazing. But it just isn't quite able to walk that tightrope the way it does the first one. It puts the audience in some uncomfortable situations as far as like who you're pulling for, and ultimately got a little bit too big. It stretched itself a little too thin by the end of it, and ultimately just misses the mark. So for me, Don't Breathe 2 goes 2.5 C-Maniacs out of 5. Right down the middle, man. This was going to be a tough one to pull off from jump, just because of what cards you were dealt. But I thought that Alvarez and Sayagues do the best with the idea that they could, and I thought Sayagues did some really nice things from behind the camera. I appreciated how he built his sequences. He really does get the suspense and the terror right, and the things that they're executing work most of the time, but just misses the mark a little bit. And like I said, it was going to be a hard one to really nail. So 2.5 C-Maniacs out of 5 for the old C-Man. Now it's your turn. I want to know you, audience. What are you thinking? From a conceptual standpoint, like going back to the world of Don't Breathe, was that something that you thought could work? With a character like the Blind Man, was it ever going to be a worthwhile experiment? If you've seen the movie, did it work? Did they walk that tightrope again, or did they just miss the mark? What sequences and things popped for you? What things didn't work? Did it make you uncomfortable at all? Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, on Don't Breathe 2 goes down below in the comments section. Make sure you keep it spoiler-free where you can. And I look forward to talking to you guys down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with C-Man anytime. We talk movies, TV, trailer, reactions. You want to be here for all the goods you haven't yet. You want to show a little love support to the old C-Man. You dig what I'm doing. You're like, hey, you know what? Let me support this guy. Well, come. Join C-Maniac Nation. Real easy to do. All you gotta do is jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.